When my wife died in 2016, my parents were the first people I called. They didn't just show up, they took over. They arranged the food, dominated the conversation, and played the grieving in-laws like Oscar-winning actors. That was the moment I should have known who they really were. But grief makes you blind. And back then, I still believed they loved me. Fast forward 6 years. I found love again. Her name was Isabel. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, she wasn't the life of the party, which is exactly why my parents never approved of her. She was quiet, thoughtful, introverted. She worked as a hospice nurse and never tried to impress my family, which they took as a personal insult. But she made me feel calm, safe. We married in a small ceremony, just the three of us, me, Isabel, and my daughter from my first marriage, Lila. My parents didn't attend. They were disappointed I didn't do something proper. Isabel passed away this February. It was sudden. Heart attack. I found her in the kitchen, collapsed with the kettle still whistling. I didn't scream. I didn't cry right away. I remember walking into Lila's room, holding her tight, and whispering, "We're on our own again, baby." The first call I made, after 911, was to my parents. I could hear music in the background, laughter, maybe clinking glasses. "Hello," my mother answered. "Mom, Isabel's dead." Silence. A beat. Then a sigh. "Oh, honey, that's awful. But we're kind of in the middle of something. It's your sister's birthday. Can this wait until tomorrow?" "Are you serious?" "Don't be dramatic," she said. "You're a grown man. You've lost a wife before. We'll talk tomorrow." "Okay. Love you." Click. That was the last time I tried to involve them in my pain. The funeral was small. Just a few co-workers of Isabel's, some neighbors, and Lila, holding a single lily like it weighed 10 pounds. Isabel had no surviving family. Her only request, written in an old journal I found after her death, was no sad speeches. Only stories. Good ones. So that's what we did. After the service, I took Lila to our favorite diner. She didn't touch her pancakes, just held the little syrup bottle in her fingers, turning it slowly like it was a puzzle. "Daddy," she said, "are people always this fake when someone dies?" I didn't know what to say. It wasn't until 3 weeks later that my parents showed up. No call, no text, just a knock at my door on a Sunday afternoon. They were dressed like they were headed to brunch, mom in pearls, dad in boat shoes. My mother gave me a hug so stiff it felt like an obligation. My father gave Lila a $5 bill and said, "Go buy yourself something sweet, pumpkin." She rolled her eyes and went to her room. "Let's sit," my mom said, already making her way to the living room like it was her house. They didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention Isabel. They launched right in. "So, we were thinking," my father said. "It's probably time we have a mature conversation about the inheritance." I stared at him. "What inheritance?" "You know, Isabel's. She didn't have any siblings. Or parents. She was married to you. Which means half of her estate, legally, is yours. And technically, since you're our son." My jaw locked. "You think you're entitled to my dead wife's money?" "No, no, no," my mother said quickly. "Not entitled. Just helping you manage it. You have no idea how tricky these things can get. And we know you're emotional right now. It's a lot for one person. Especially with a kid. A kid that you ignored when her stepmother died." I shot back. "We were busy," my mom snapped. "You act like the world stops because you're having a bad day. This is real life. Birthdays, obligations, they don't go away because you're grieving." I laughed. I actually laughed. It was one of those bitter, hollow laughs that echoes in your chest after the anger has nowhere to go. I stood up and walked to the hallway, where Lila was watching from behind the corner. She held a plain white envelope in her hand. "Is that it?" she whispered. I nodded. "Go ahead." Lila walked into the room and stood in front of my parents. "Here," she said, holding the envelope out like a bomb she didn't want to touch. My mother took it, confused. "What's this? Isn't this why you came?" Lila asked. "That's what you wanted, right?" My father narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "Open it." They did. Inside was a printed photo, one of Isabel's favorites. It was a picture of our backyard. Isabel barefoot in the grass, twirling Lila in the air as sunlight poured through the trees. It was joy in physical form. And underneath it was a single sentence, written in Isabel's delicate cursive. "You don't get to claim what you never cherished." My parents froze. My mother's hands started to tremble. I don't know if it was rage. Shame. Maybe both. They stood up silently, and walked to the door. No goodbye, no apology, nothing. Just the quiet sound of entitlement realizing it lost. I stood at the window and watched them walk to their car in silence. No shouting, no slamming doors. Just the slow, measured retreat of two people who'd never expected to be told no. Lila came to stand beside me, her small hand sliding into mine. Do you think they'll come back? I didn't answer. But I didn't think it mattered. Because they'd seen it now, seen that envelope, seen that line in Isabel's writing, and most importantly, seen the look in their own grandchild's eyes. The look that said, I see through you. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and opened Isabel's notebook again. She kept lists for everything. Favorite teas, book recommendations, notes from her patients, quotes that made her smile. And tucked between them, folded like it was something sacred, was a page labeled, If I die suddenly. It wasn't legally binding. She'd written an actual will with our lawyer last year, shortly after her cancer scare. But this was the soul of it. The part no document could capture. It was a letter to me and to Lila. It said, If I go before I'm old and gray, tell Lila I chose joy until the end. That I loved her like she was mine, even if I never birthed her. And tell anyone who comes sniffing around what I've left behind, I gave you my heart, not a paycheck. I owe no one anything except the people I called home. I broke down. The kind of crying that turns your whole body inside out. I hadn't really let it hit me until that moment. Not fully. But she was gone. And she had left behind a world of love that money couldn't touch. 2 days later, my sister called. Of course. Hey, she said, in that falsely cheerful tone that always meant she wanted something. Heard Mom and Dad came by. Everything okay? They came to ask for half my wife's inheritance, I said bluntly. There was a pause. Then a laugh. You know, I can sort of see where they're coming from. Is that right? I mean, Isabel didn't have any family. And you're part of ours. So technically, don't. What? Don't say technically. Don't try to dress it up. You want the money too. That's why you're calling. You're being paranoid. No, I said. I'm being practiced. I've seen this game before. The moment something's left behind, the vultures start circling. I'm your sister, she snapped. You weren't at the funeral. She went quiet. I could hear her breathing. Shallow, defensive. I couldn't get off work. It was a Sunday. Another silence. Then, you've always been dramatic. I hung up, blocked her number. That was the moment I realized something cold and awful. Isabel was worth more to my family, Dad, than she ever was alive. And it wasn't just about the money. It was about control. About the idea that I had something they didn't. Something they thought they deserved. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Isabel's lawyer. Her name was Meredith Chong. 60-ish, glasses, silver streaks in her black hair, and a voice like a librarian who didn't take bullshit. She knew about the previous call with my parents because they'd tried to reach her too, asking if there was a way to appeal the inheritance division or a legal loophole. She told them to pound sand in much nicer words. Here's the thing, Mr. Rowan, she said. You're the sole beneficiary. But more importantly, your wife made it very clear who was never to get a dime. She pulled up a clause in the will, one Isabel insisted on adding after an uncomfortable Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago where my parents accused her of mooching off their son. No part of my estate shall be distributed to the parents or siblings of my husband. This is not a personal attack. It is an act of protection for myself, my legacy, and for the piece of the family I chose, not the one that tolerates me. Meredith smiled. You don't often see that level of bluntness in a will. But your wife, she didn't mince words. No, she didn't. Isabel was silk over steel. Gentle voice, sharp spine. She never started fights, but she finished every one she was forced into. The next weekend, I took Lila to the bookstore. It was something Isabel used to do with her. They'd come back with bags of paperbacks, posted sticking out of the spines. Lila liked to write book reports for her stepmom, even though no one asked her to. We were walking through the kids section when I noticed a woman watching us. Blonde. Makeup too heavy for daytime. The kind of smile that didn't touch her eyes. My sister. Hey, she said. Can we talk? No. I think this has gone too far. I glanced at Lila, who immediately squeezed my hand tighter. You need to leave. I don't understand why you're being like this. Because you're not here to grieve. You're here to collect. And I'm done playing the grieving fool while you circle like a wolf. Lila pulled me toward the exit. My sister didn't follow. She called later that night from a new number. Left a voicemail that started with, "We're family," and ended with, "I hope Isabel rots." I saved it. 2 weeks passed. No contact from my parents. No knocks. No letters. Then Lila got an email. Not me. Her. 8 years old. It was from my mother. Somehow she found her school email. Told her grandma misses you, and that daddy is hurting and doesn't know what he's doing, and that maybe she could ask him to share the money Isabel left. Lila read it to me in the car. I want to write back, she said. Can I? I hesitated, then nodded. She opened the note app on her iPad and started typing. Didn't ask for help. Just wrote it. When she was done, she handed it to me. I read it and had to look out the window so she wouldn't see my eyes watering. It said, Dear Grandma, I'm not your ATM. Isabel loved me. You didn't. I'm not going to forget how you didn't come when she died. Please don't email me again. From Lila. I sent the message. And for good measure, I forwarded the original email to Meredith Chang. She was furious. Said if they contacted Lila again, she'd file a cease and desist so fast it would give them whiplash. That was the moment I decided. This wasn't just grief. This was war. There's a moment, a precise moment, when you realize your family isn't your family anymore. For me, it wasn't when my parents ignored my call to tell them Isabel died. It wasn't when they showed up asking for money. It wasn't even when my sister told me I was too dramatic for expecting empathy. It was when they went after my daughter, an 8-year-old girl who had already buried one mother and watched another collapse in front of her eyes. A girl who still leaves out a cup of tea every Sunday because that's what she and Isabel used to do together. That's who they targeted. That's when I knew. They didn't deserve mercy. They deserved a warning shot, one they'd never forget. I started by going through Isabel's financial files. She was meticulous. Her documents were sorted in color-coded folders, labeled in both marker and braille because one of her former patients had helped her design the system. She had stocks, a life insurance policy, and a modest trust fund from a great aunt I'd never met. It wasn't millions, but it was enough that, with my income and smart management, Lila would be set for college, and I could keep our home without worry. That's what Isabel wanted. It's what my family wanted to dismantle. And that's what I was going to make damn sure they'd never get near again. I scheduled a follow-up meeting with Meredith, Isabel's lawyer. Your parents are escalating, she said after reviewing the email to Lila. I'd suggest we escalate too. A cease and desist letter is the first step. I signed the paperwork. The letter went out 2 days later, one to each of them, my parents and my sister. Certified. Delivered with a receipt. The contents were clear. No contact with me or my daughter, written or otherwise. No further inquiries about Isabel's estate. Violation would result in legal action, including a harassment suit and potential restraining orders. My father's response? He drove to my driveway the next morning, honked his horn until I came outside, and held the envelope up like it was a dirty diaper. This is a joke, right? He barked. You've always been soft, but now you're threatening your own family? No threats, I said, arms crossed. Just boundaries. You think we're going to let you throw us away over her money? That woman ruined you. Funny, I said. I was about to say the same thing about you. He got out of the car, chest puffed like he was trying to look bigger than he was. You're a disgrace. Hiding behind lawyers. Getting your daughter involved. I raised you better than this. No, I said. You raised me scared. Isabel taught me to be strong. He stared at me. Something behind his eyes flickered, not rage. Something worse. Fear. He turned without another word, slammed the car door, and drove off. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. We're not done. You don't get to cut us out like this. Isabel isn't even blood. She doesn't get to take us down from the grave. I saved it. Sent it straight to Meredith. She added it to the file. A week passed. Then another. Silence. No emails. No calls. No showing up at Lila's school. Thank God. I started to think maybe the letter had worked, until I got a notice from Isabel's old employer. They were following up on a request to access her personnel records and employment file. A request made by my sister. She'd forged a document claiming to be Isabel's executor and tried to request her pension payout. I sat in my car and stared at the email for what felt like hours. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't start the ignition. They weren't just trying to guilt trip me. They were trying to steal from a dead woman. I called Meredith again. She was already on it. The company had flagged the request as suspicious and reported it to her office. Your sister committed identity fraud, she said calmly. Would you like to press charges? I didn't answer right away, because somewhere deep inside me, a part of me, the tired part, The grieving part, didn't want to drag this into the courtroom. Not for my sake. But then I looked at Lila, curled up on the couch in her unicorn pajamas, watching a home video of Isabel reading her a bedtime story. And I remembered the words my sister said on that voicemail. I hope Isabel rots. Yes. Yes, I wanted to press charges. 2 days later, the police came to speak with me. Not because I was in trouble, because they needed a statement. I gave them everything. The fake employment request, the forged signature, the email to Lila. Even the voicemail. They were quiet for a long time. Then one officer said, she's not just manipulative. She's dangerous. My sister was served with a court summons the following week. The news hit the family like a bomb. Suddenly, I was getting calls again. From relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Why are you doing this? She's your sister. This could ruin her life. To all of them, I said the same thing. She tried to steal from my dead wife and manipulated my daughter. She ruined her own life. Most of them backed off. 1 or 2 kept pushing. So I blocked them too. Then came the final straw. My parents called Lila's school. They tried to get on her approved pickup list. The front desk, bless Mrs. Raines, immediately flagged it and called me. They said they were the grandparents, she told me. That it was an emergency. That you weren't able to come. But something didn't feel right. Lila's told us a lot about them. I had to excuse myself from the office and throw up in the bathroom. This wasn't a feud anymore. This was war. And I was going to win. That night, I sat down with Lila. Told her everything. She didn't cry. She just listened. Then she looked at me and said, so we're cutting them out forever, right? I nodded. Good, she said. Because they were never really family. And with that, I knew I was doing the right thing. My sister's court summons had barely cooled when the backlash began. Not from the police. Not from lawyers. From Facebook. A cousin posted a long, melodramatic rant about family unity and how sad it is when grief becomes a weapon. She didn't name me directly, but it didn't take a genius to read between the lines. The comments section was a minefield. She's always been a bit dramatic. Maybe if he wasn't so cold. They're grieving too, you know. That money could have helped the whole family. They called it money. They didn't call it Isabel's. They didn't call it what it actually was, the product of decades of compassion, the life savings of a woman who held the hands of dying patients and whispered them toward peace. They reduced her to an asset. A prize. AF ******************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** them rant, she said. The court doesn't care about Facebook. But something about the hypocrisy boiled my blood. These were the same people who skipped Isabel's memorial. Who'd sent, "sorry for your loss" texts instead of showing up. Who had the nerve to say I was the one making grief ugly. I opened my laptop, drafted a single post. Grief isn't a weapon. It's a shield I've had to carry alone while the people who call themselves my family tried to steal from a woman they never loved, lied to a child they barely knew, and violated her memory like grave robbers in cardigans. If you think I'm the problem, you were never part of the solution. Don't call. Don't visit. Don't pretend this is about anything but greed. I hit post, logged off, turned my phone off for 3 days. Meanwhile, Lila was asking questions. She wasn't sad. She was angry. Why did Grandma try to pick me up from school? What were they going to do? Take me home and lock me in until you gave them money? Her imagination ran wild. I didn't want to feed it. But I also wasn't going to lie. They were trying to scare us, I said. They thought if they got close enough, we'd give in. Lila, ever the blunt little sage, replied, "They're like raccoons. They only come around when they smell food." The court date for my sister's hearing was set for early June. Meredith advised I not attend personally unless subpoenaed. I wouldn't be testifying. But I wanted to be there anyway. I wanted to see her face when the gavel came down. The night before the hearing, I got an email. No subject line. No signature. Just one sentence. "You'll regret all of this when she's gone." It hit me like a brick to the chest. I wasn't sure if she meant Isabel, cruel, but past tense, or worse, Lila. I forwarded it to Meredith, who immediately contacted the judge. The next morning, my parents and sister had security escorts into the courthouse. Their devices were searched. My sister's husband was turned away at the door after refusing to hand over his phone. The judge didn't even raise his voice. He simply read the charges. Attempted identity fraud, falsification of legal documents, harassment of a minor. Then he read the exhibits, the forged employment request, the email to Lila, the voicemail hoping Isabel would rot. The courtroom was dead quiet. When he looked up, his eyes landed on my sister. You're lucky, he said, because the plaintiff chose not to press for jail time. But I can assure you, had this been criminally prosecuted, the outcome would be very different. She tried to speak. Her lawyer tugged her arm gently. He continued, Instead, I'm ordering a no-contact order effective immediately. You will not attempt to communicate with the plaintiff or his daughter by any means, written, digital, or physical, or through any third party. Violation will result in immediate escalation to criminal court. He turned to my parents. And let me be clear, that includes you. Any attempts to circumvent this order by proxy will be treated as direct violations. My mother burst into tears. For once, no one offered her a tissue. Outside the courthouse, I sat in the car watching the three of them exit. My father was stiff, jaw locked. My mother looked like someone had just turned off the electricity to her world. My sister, she was trying to walk proud, but every step screamed defeat. I didn't speak to them, didn't roll down the window, just watched. Then I turned the ignition and drove home to my daughter. When I walked through the door, Lila was sitting at the kitchen table, drawing. She looked up, hopeful. Is it over? I smiled. Yeah, it's over. She handed me a crayon drawing, a big house with a garden, her and Isabel standing under a tree, me holding a leash attached to a badly drawn blob-labeled dog. We're still getting a puppy, right? I laughed. I hadn't cried since the first week after Isabel's death. But in that moment, I felt something break free, not sadness, not anger, relief. Yeah, kiddo, I said. We're getting a dog. But the peace didn't last, because just when I thought the storm had passed, I found something in Isabel's things I wasn't meant to see. Something she never told me. A second will. I found it by accident. A manila envelope, unmarked, wedged between old journals and Isabel's writing desk. Inside was a handwritten document. No lawyer's seal, no witness signatures, just a date, her initials, and 6 sentences. If anything ever happens to me unexpectedly, know this. Everything I have goes to Rowan and Lila. If someone tries to challenge that, show them this. My family is the one I made, not the one that ignored me. Love is earned. Blood means nothing. Tell Lila she was my forever girl. My hands trembled as I read it. I didn't need it for court. We'd already won. But I needed it for me. For Lila. Proof that even in private, Isabel chose us. Not out of obligation. Out of love. I framed the note. Hung it beside Lila's bedroom door. That weekend, I took Lila to the animal shelter. We adopted a scruffy black mutt with too much energy and not enough sense. She named him Miso, after Isabel's favorite soup. As we walked him through the park, Lila looked up at me. Isabel would have loved him. She does, I said. She just loves him from somewhere else. My family hasn't contacted us since the hearing. They won't. They know better now. But sometimes, I still get emails from old friends or distant relatives trying to convince me to make peace or be the bigger person. I don't respond, because I've already made peace. In a quiet house with a daughter who knows her worth, a photo of a woman spinning in sunlight, and a dog that barks every time a raccoon tries to sneak too close.